Father, thank you for making it all happen now. Father, you brought your sons, your daughters into this room. Father, in spite of every effort of Satan, our adversary, to tear us apart from you, to make it impossible to be with you. Father, somehow you have prevailed. You have won. The victory is yours. We are here. We're gathered in your presence. Now, Father, in spite of myself, use me for the sake of your children, your sons and your daughters. Let your words speak into their hearts right here and right now. Father, may the words of my mouth, meditations of my heart be always acceptable in your sight. And Lord, our rock and our redeemer. Okay, so I've got a question. How many are married? How many are married? Raise your hand. Okay. Okay, the guys that are married, raise your hand. Okay. So we got about 10 of us in this room that will directly relate with at least my part when I ask you the question. Do you remember when you first got engaged to your wife? Remember that? Remember that moment? Now, I remember it. My wife, Sarah, there's that moment, and I had to ask her a question. Now, all right, now I know these days a lot of us are doing it a little bit differently. It's sort of like we try to ease into it so we never really have to ask the question somehow. We're trying to work that, so that it's just sort of well understood kind of thing. You know what I'm talking about? But that's not really how it's supposed to go, right? You got to, the old-fashioned way is really the way you're supposed to do it, because you got to step out and ask her. So that's what I did. I did it that way. And I remember there in her apartment, crystal clear, like, remember that moment, kind of nervous. Okay, and I asked her, will you, kind of like that, will you marry me? Okay. Been there? Anybody know what I'm talking about? Okay. And the deal is, okay, you're really terrified about what happened because it's not an entitlement at that moment. I have just put myself in the private position asking, senior leadership for something. I'm now vulnerable. And, well, thankfully she said yes. But the thing was, she had to make a decision at that moment, and she could do it. I mean, everybody knows it was physically possible for her to say yes. But the issue wasn't about whether she wanted to say yes or not. What was the issue? She's deciding now in front of me, do I want to do this? Right? Is it going to make me happy? Do I have a desire? Do I want you? So I'm putting myself, I don't know whether really at the end of the day she really wants me that bad. So, fortunately she did. So the question wasn't can you? The question was, do you want to? She did want to. So if you start to understand that, and you're thinking about that for a moment, let's just think about that. That's sort of what was going on behind this whole passage with this leper. Now, in the story that we just read, the leper, we don't know his name. Now, Jesus knows his name. He's up there in heaven with Jesus, and he's living for eternity and joy. And he's not leprosy. He's not sick anymore. But the thing that you got to understand about what was going on back then is a few things to just study and understand. One was that if you were physically sick, you were a leper, it wasn't just about the fact that you were physically sick. What was it also about? Anybody know?
You were cast aside.
You were cast aside, you were outcast, nobody wanted to talk to you. You needed to stay over there. But it was even more than that. Even more than that. They had this understanding back then that if you were physically sick, there was a reason for it. You know what that reason was? Anybody know? You were a bad person. Most of us nowadays, we assume that if you're sick, I got a head cold or something, that's not about whether I'm good or bad. But back then, if you were sick, that was associated with being a good or bad person. So not only was that guy sick and he contagious, but he was bad. He was morally bad. And they wanted to know, did you do something in your life that caused this to happen? So in another passage, if you remember, they asked Jesus, he's talking about the blind man, was that man born blind because of the sins of his parents or his own sin? But sin was somewhere. And that's why he couldn't see. Jesus said, no, it wasn't really about that in this case. But that is the understanding they had. So that's kind of where, if you've ever heard this idea of being dirty and something morally bad with you, that's where we get it from. You ever heard of a dirty policeman, a dirty cop who's morally corrupt? That is where we are tying that idea of physical condition. Like really, if I have some dirt on my hands, does that make me a bad person? But back, what's that? No, right? But back then, they got that understanding that the physical condition was associated with immoral. In some ways, it's true. We see there, if you're not doing your sanitation properly and you're not careful and you're doing things, you might get sick, and there's a little bit of a connection there, right? But back then, that's what they said. And so when you were sick and then you were then healed, what's really crazy about what happened in that story? Jesus sent him to go see the who?
Priest.
The doctor or the priest?
The priest.
The medical, what do they call them? No, but they come. What kind of you? The APMC or the chaplain? The APMC doc. That's who they would see the chaplain instead. And so that's kind of where we get this whole idea of baptism from. And in another story, where baptism washes the sins away from you. You're just getting dunked with water, but they're just cleaning the sin. It's a symbolic gesture that now you're clean in terms of your heart. In another passage, there was this passage where Jesus was healing a guy who is lame, and he's laid down on the floor, and he walks up to him, and you would think these days we would say, stand and be healed and walk. But what was the first thing that Jesus said to him?
Stand up.
No, that was the whole thing. In his case, he did. First thing he said, anybody know this passage? I know you know it, but you can't say it. I know Chaplain McMahon knows it. I know Lieutenant Gonzalez knows it, but you can't say it. He said what?
Stay down.
Don't get up because you'll have a blood rush or something. No. Your sins are forgiven you. And in that gesture, he was saying, first things first, in all healing, the main thing I want to heal you from is not even your body, but your heart and your soul. And so from that, we take that today, and get this idea that is what Jesus wants to do. But a couple more things I want to mention. Going back to the leper, what happened in that story was that Jesus walks up to him, or actually the man walks up to Jesus, and he asks Jesus a question. He did not say, Jesus, can you? But he said, will you? And he used a word that they had back then, and it's the same word in both they use it the same way in the Hebrew and the Greek. The Hebrew, if you want to really get into it, is yaotab, and the Greek is thelo. And what that means is, do you want to? It is the word that I would have used if I were Greek or Hebrew, if I were going to ask my wife, will you marry me? Do you want to marry? Will it give you joy and pleasure? And he asked Jesus, as if he were asking Jesus, that same kind of tender question, is this something that will make you happy? And so when he went up to Jesus, he said, Jesus, you and I both know that first things first, I'm a sinner, I'm sick, I need healing, my body is in carnage, I'm going to die in a week or two, but I'm not asking you if you can, because I know you can. I have confidence in that, and I have faith. But I'm asking you, will you? Do you want to? Of course, Jesus said, of course. But at that moment, notice what is different from what the apostles, the disciples themselves, weaken their faith in this other man. He came up to Jesus and he said, Jesus, this has been happening to my son. The Spirit is casting him in the fire and the water, and it's going to destroy him. But if you can do anything, you can heal him. What did Jesus say at that point? Folks, it's not if I can. I can do anything I want. When I'm here, don't worry. The leper got it right. He asked him with confidence and humility. What happened after that? Jesus sent him to the doctor to get that certificate of cleansing to demonstrate that he had been clean, not just physically, but in his soul. So let's just think about that. What does that mean to me today? How does that connect? Does that say anything to me?
The teacher would always ask, we'd ask, can we go to the restroom? And she's like, can you? Instead of saying, and then we had to say our question, may I go to the restroom?
Yeah.
May I go to the restroom?
Yeah, of course you can.
Can, yeah.
Right. Okay. And so it comes down to this. We need to recognize that each person in this room need to listen to this passage. Because not all of us may have a physical sickness. Right? Not all of us are lame. Maybe only very few of us are. But here's the thing. There is not one person in this room, as sure as the light is on and light is day, that is not sick. Do y'all realize that? There's not one person that's not sick in our heart. That is our physical reality. That's the truth is. Not one person in here does not need this healing that Jesus is talking about. It's not physical healing. That does happen sometimes. It's the healing of our hearts. We've been inflicted with disease in two ways. We have been wounded by the things that have happened to us, and we've gone on to pass the favor. We've been hurt, and we've gone on and taken somebody like a vampire, sucked the blood out of somebody else. Every single one of us. It's like this. And Jesus comes in there and he wants to heal us. And sometimes he may not even heal us physically. And I'm going to tell you a story. I remember a lady who was in Beaufort, South Carolina. And in her mid-50s, I won't tell you all the details, but she was going to the church I was pastoring. She all of a sudden had a physical stroke and half of her body was paralyzed basically in an instant. Now this woman, according to her son, who wouldn't even call her mom, but would only call her by her first name because he was so angry with the things that she'd done to him, been hurt and wounded. And, when you talk about a pain in the neck, I'm sure that that's what this woman was, because I got to know her a little bit. And all of a sudden, bam, half her body was paralyzed. And we could have prayed all we wanted, but I'm telling you, this woman was not going to be healed physically. But what did happen was that after weeks and months, the change in her heart happened. She was broken down. And she came to say, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I never, and then you would talk to her. She was a sweet, gentle, kind woman. Before she was the wicked witch of the West. All right. And now she was a changed person. She was healed in her heart. And every 4 years or so, I go to her and we hug, and I see her in the nursing home where she is still to this day, almost 20 years later. That was the healing that Jesus gave her. Beautiful thing. And like I said, we all have these diseases. Go ahead and get that video going. Get it close to get it being started. I know that I have been inflicted with sickening diseases and would not have had the faintest idea that there was anything wrong with me. But thank God, God has broken me down because I've been wounded. And at least if there's one thing that I can see now, I mean, I'm going to tell you the honest truth. And I'm almost ashamed to admit it. Because how dare I do this to somebody that could have been my daughter? But I'm going to confess to you now that it is not something I've not ever done where I can take a dollar bill and put it for something that's just disgusting to me. I tell you, that's the truth. But I know that as much as I'm healing, God isn't even through with me yet. And that is the healing that we're talking about. Whether we're healed physically or not, we will still die. But when we are healed in our hearts, we will live eternally. And the final thing just to say about that. Well, let's just go ahead and play it, yeah. And this is a passage, we need to turn the light off for a second. John Newton, the same thing. He made his living running a ship that would take slaves in the carnage and wreckage of the slave ships. And he was saved, and he wrote that song, Amazing Grace. And that song, which lives today, is his words speaking out the grief in his heart and how thankful to God he was that he was healed. Go ahead.
On the wall. Arms are tied to a hook on a crane, and weights of 56 pounds applied to their feet. The crane is raised so that their feet barely touch the ground. The slaves are then whipped with ebony bushes, to let out the congealing blood. I don't hear the nib scratching the tape.
We have company, sir. John. It's me, Wilbur.
Leave it.
They only told me your sight was fading.
Well, now it's faded altogether. I never did things by halves. God decided I'd seen enough.
So it's true.
What's true?
Writing your account.
I wish I could see your face. How are you looking?
See?
Still too thin.
A little fatter lately.
Oh, she feeds you well then, this wife of yours?
She's given me an appetite.
An appetite to change things. This is my confession. You must use it. Names, ship's records, ports, people. Everything I remember is in here. Although my memory is fading, I remember two things very clearly. I'm a great sinner and Christ is a great Savior. You must publish it. Blow a hole in their boat with it. Damn them with it. I wish I could remember all their names. My 20,000 ghosts. They all had names. Beautiful African names. We call them with just grunts, noises. We were apes. They were humans. And weeping. I couldn't breathe till I wrote this. I once was blind but now I see. Did I write that too?
Yes, you did.
Well, now at last it's true. Now go, we'll go. We've lots of work to do, you and I.
Strange treasures in this.
We all need to go through this process. Forgiving those that have wounded us. Begging Almighty God, and if they're available, the person we've hurt, to forgive us as well. Not one person does not apply to. What is it that you want to do? This is the only way to be healed. Turn, forgive, and be forgiven. And Jesus wants to do this. It is his delight. Desires it, nothing more. It's his promise to you that it is not a matter of whether he can, but he will do it as we turn to him. And in that, and that alone, you will find the answer. What do you want to do?